Welcome to One on One, the Daily Items weekly digital program, featuring Susquehanna Valley newsmakers, interviewed by Daily Item reporters. Today's guest is Elton Hayes, CNHI Penn State reporter, interviewed by managing editor Bill Bowman.
Sunbury Motor Company.
Austin Martin, Kia Elite Sales Consultant, Maranatha Christian School.
Amber Wren, Certified Hyundai and Lincoln Sales Consultant, Selinsgrove Area High School.
Ian Chikuski, Certified Ford Sales Professional, Mount Carmel and Shamokin area.
Christopher Stengline, Ford Certified Sales Consultant, Selinsgrove Area High School.
Tom Mertz, fourth generation owner, Sunbury Motor Company, Shikellamy High School.
A tradition of trust since 1915.
Welcome to One on One. I'm Daily Item Managing Editor Bill Bowman. This week's guest is CNHI's new Penn State reporter Elton Hayes, who came to CNHI Pennsylvania from Meridian, Mississippi, where he was also at another CNHI newspaper. Elton is going to be covering all things Pennsylvania sports for the 5 CNHI papers in Pennsylvania here in Sunbury, Johnstown, Meadville, Newcastle, and Sharon. Elton, we'll jump right into it.
All right,
Welcome.
sounds good. Thank you.
We'll jump right into it. You've already seen, as of this recording, 2 practices. I think you've seen all of the first practice on August 3rd and a little bit of practice on Wednesday night. You get a little bit of media availability after practice. Anything that's jumped out at you that has sort of stood out or you've noticed from those first couple practices?
Franklin's pretty fired up, but in a good way. I know, yesterday at the end of practice, he was in a very good mood, was joking with reporters, and, I think he was just pleased at how the first few days have unfolded. So it was kind of good to be out there and see the guys had on pads yesterday. So there's a little scuffle at the end, but, those things are to be expected this early in camp. But football's almost here.
What you talked about his excitement. He's had a couple good recruiting classes in a row. The guys are young, but you've been around him a few days. Has he started to see the growth that he wants to see out of those young guys?
Yeah, he has. He actually talked about this guy's not really young, but he's a new addition. Brisker over from Lackawanna. He kind of talked about the maturity that he possesses and how he's kind of picked things up, quicker than he expected, quicker than Franklin expected. He talked about the 2 freshman running backs yesterday and was very pleased with their development so far. And so I don't know what that means as far as playing time goes. Right. With the guys of that talent, you might want to keep one of them, preserve that redshirt eligibility for him later on. But overall, he seems to be impressed with the maturity and development of this class.
And he always talks about making their program one of the more competitive environments around the country, and maybe that's what led to the chippiness at practice.
I think so.
You get 2 guys just getting at each other.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're a coach, that's a good sign. Emotions are high. These are competitive guys, but this happens everywhere. So, I don't want to knock on CJ too much.
You talked about some of the positions already. Let's talk about some key position battles that are going to get sorted out through camp. We'll start with quarterback. I mean, everyone expects, I think including you, that Sean Clifford's going to be the starter. Coach Franklin has not named him the starter yet. He says there's a competition between Clifford, who thinks a redshirt sophomore, and Will Levis, the redshirt freshman. Your thoughts on what you've seen in 2 days and what you're hearing from everybody about that competition?
They both look pretty good. Obviously, Clifford, they haven't dubbed him the starter yet, but he's been taking the first team reps. He's been out there with a lot of the guys who are running, who are on the first team. But I tell you, just off sheer appearance, Levis looks the part, man. I mean, I think Franklin said a couple times he's built like Troy Aikman, and he's not lying. But Clifford's been out there, seems to have good command of the offense. Obviously, has the command or the respect of his teammates, and Levis is in there pushing for time. I gotta look at the 2 freshmen, Robinson and Taquan Johnson. Yeah, and they're green, so I don't expect them to really be making a push for that position. But they look solid out there, though.
Yeah, but everybody's going to have to step up at that position because of the unexpected transfer of Tommy Stevens. I think everybody thought he would be the guy, and you would get another year of growth for Clifford.
Yeah.
So it forces everybody to step up. From everything you've heard and I've heard, it sounds like Clifford has really taken a leadership role on the offense and the team.
He has. This kind of started with the Lift for Life, how he, kind of jumped up and said that he wanted to be the president of that, which really got a lot of his teammates' respect. When Tommy Stevens transferred, we heard that Clifford stood up in the team meeting and said that, it's on him now. He's going to do everything he can to be a leader, and that goes a long way. He has the pedigree. He's been around the program now for a few years, and like I said, I'd be very surprised, as I'm sure a lot of other people will, if he's not the starter against Idaho in a couple weeks.
You talked about running back as well with the two freshmen. They do have Ricky Slade back, who was a 5-star recruit, was Miles Sanders' backup last year. You have Journey Brown from Meadville, who has really stepped up, a sprint champion in high school. And then the two freshmen you mentioned, Noah Kane, who came in early. I think he came in January.
Yeah, he did.
And then Devin Ford, who just got on campus in June. I know Coach talked yesterday that he likes the depth they have. Ideally, the depth would be a little bit more spread out across the classes.
Staggered a little bit.
That happens when you have Barkley left a year early and Miles Sanders both left a year early. But I think you can say he likes the depth they have there. He just wishes a little more spread out.
It's a good problem to have, but with it kind of being, like you said, being such a young group, you want to retain some of that talent for later on. But there are worse positions to be in if you're James Franklin. Ricky Slade and Journey Brown are probably the two obvious front runners right now. Both look really good in camp. Journey's back there returning kicks also. Just on physical appearance alone, he looks the part. He's put on some weight. His arms are pretty big. His legs are pretty big. And so it's going to be interesting to see where they go. I was kind of caught up with Journey on Saturday during media day, and he talked about how he's just not only grown as a player, but just mentally, some things that he wanted to mature more since he's been on campus. And Juwan Snyder and I talked also, and he said that that's one of the things that's really impressed him with the Journey the last couple of years. It's just his maturation as a
what have
person.
they said? What, if anything, have they said about the suspension? That it's I know you did a story on him coming out of media days, that he worked out a lot with his high school coach back in Meadville to stay ready to get back on the campus August 1st.
Yeah, nothing was really said as the suspension. It just kind of sweeping it under the rug. But I spoke with Coach Collins a few weeks ago for that story, and he said Journey was down there every day with him, just kind of working out and staying in football shape while he was serving that suspension.
Do you have any sense that with the two freshmen that they maybe take advantage of that 4-game rule with the possible redshirt, that they can maybe play each of them 4 games and save them if they need to?
I would not be surprised, especially with it being, I think, in looking at the roster, there are 5 running backs on there right now, Nick Urey being the 5th guy. He's a senior. I don't think he played the last few seasons, but with running back in the Big Ten, I think we'll see a couple of those guys play just to preserve that backfield a bit.
Switch over to the other side of the ball, safety. You have, obviously, Garrett Taylor, who you also did a feature on this week.
Very impressive young man, by the way.
Locked in at one of the safeties. And the other spot, you have Jaquan Brisker, who's the transfer from Lackawanna you mentioned. You have Lamont Wade, who was Mr. Pennsylvania football a couple years ago, and Sutherland there. So you got 3 guys battling for that spot. Anybody stood out so far there?
Not really. Wade is obviously the guy with the most experience there. Sutherland, I believe, started 1 game last year. He's a talent as well. He's from Canada, if I'm not mistaken, but played his high school ball in Virginia. And Brisker, he's one of the guys Franklin was very complimentary of yesterday. Just like I mentioned earlier, he said he's really been impressed with his maturity, the way he's been able to pick things up. He said if there's a ball on the ground, he's down there grappling, scrapping forward. It's just, really like a spark plug that's really impressed early. Coming from a program like Lackawanna, which is kind of like I got to throw in the East Mississippi plug. The East Mississippi of the Northeast, you're getting a player of good pedigree.
Jump back onto offense. I know you did a feature again. I'm plugging Elton's features here all week, or all hour here. So Ricky Ronnie, the offensive coordinator, is in his 2nd year.
Yeah.
You sat down with him. It sounds like he's more comfortable in the role. He also has to replace a whole bunch of guys with McSorley gone and Miles gone and all those guys. So these guys work cut out for him, but there's some young talent there. There
is. He's a Columbia guy. A Cornell guy, rather. So, I was just reading his bio, his degrees in industry relations and labor. So, he's a bright guy. He's in the mold of the types of coaches James Franklin likes. They've known each other for years. He was with him at Kansas State, with him at Vanderbilt, and now here in Penn State. And, he dealt with a lot last year. The offense was plagued by drops. They kind of remedied that in the offseason by bringing in Jared Parker as this wide receivers coach, who Ronnie was very complimentary toward him. So it's going to be challenging in the fact that there are a lot of talented players, but they're young, and seeing how he can kind of cultivate that and develop that to play at that level here, while he's kind of still learning the position himself, being in year two. So I know he said this offseason he's read a lot of books. He's kind of consulted with other coaches outside of the program in the NFL and in-house to kind of get a better grasp and move forward in step two of his progression.
Sort of a guy lost in the shuffle to those who just follow game day is Dwight Galt. He's a guy that spends time all summer with these guys, the strength and conditioning coach, and I think Franklin will be the first one to tell you he's sort of a bedrock of their program.
Yeah.
And I know you talked to him and some players about him.
Yeah. One of the other beat writers was kind of telling me at Lift for Life, Galt's Franklin sensei. He kind of keeps him grounded, his spiritual advisor. And, the results speak for itself. He's a guy who came out of Maryland, which is where I went to school, so I got to plug Maryland. He's just developed NFL talent after NFL talent. The combine first mentality that the players talk of is something that he's really hammered home, and that's kind of staying in combine shape. Not just in your latter years, but when you first get on campus. That involves hydration, making sure you get enough sleep. Lifting not just for weight, but doing it the right way. And his impact has been very, very apparent, as we've seen with the combine, how the guys at Penn State routinely place first in their or in the top half of their position groups. And, he's one of those hidden talents at Penn State that, Franklin, I'm not sure is going to let go anytime soon.
That's great. We'll take a break here, and we'll come back for the second half with Elton Hayes.
Sunbury Motor Company.
Austin Martin, Kia Elite Sales Consultant, Maranatha Christian School.
Amber Wren, Certified Hyundai and Lincoln Sales Consultant, Selinsgrove Area High School.
Ian Chikuski, Certified Ford Sales Professional, Mount Carmel and Shamokin area.
Christopher Stengline, Ford Certified Sales Consultant, Selinsgrove Area High School.
Tom Mertz, fourth generation owner, Sunbury Motor Company, Shikellamy High School.
A tradition of trust since 1915.
Welcome back to the second half of our one-on-one with Elton Hayes, CNHI's new Penn State beat reporter. Elton, just tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you sort of got to the sports writing business a little late, and
I'm being the one interviewed now, right?
Yeah, now it's about you.
From Washington, D.C., went to the University of Maryland. When I was there, James Franklin was a offensive coordinator under Ralph Friedgen, so it's kind of neat to end up at the same spot. He's at, when I met him at Media Day, I mentioned that, and he's like, yeah, I spent my I spent 8 years there. My daughter was born there, so kind of cool to have that connection. But I kind of took a different route into journalism. I was living in D.C., working on Capitol Hill, started freelancing, and just did it for fun. I've always enjoyed sports. Before I knew it, I was getting assignments. One of my mentors down in Tuscaloosa kind of gave me some recruiting assignments up that way, and I caught the bug and just kind of kept pursuing it while I was working on Capitol Hill, and got a call about 3 years ago saying that they were hiring a sports writer in Mississippi. Sent in my resume, interviewed, and got the position, and here I am now. So it's,
what were you doing down in Mississippi then? High school
preps
sports?
in community colleges.
Okay.
So we had, I think, 19 high schools and 3 junior colleges in our coverage area. So I covered rodeos, covered tornadoes. It was a small newsroom, so we were all kind of just, chipped in. I was kind of scolded at a rodeo one time because I thought I called bulls cows, and one of the women there said, "You don't know, what are you talking about? These are..." So it was an experience being down there in the South.
So now you get back onto the college beat, and from earlier conversations you and I have had, it's not the first time you've covered big-time college football.
Yeah, I've covered several bowl games. I've covered the last BCS National Championship, Florida State and Auburn, which was an amazing game. I've covered the 2013 Rose Bowl, Wisconsin and Stanford. I've covered Michigan State and Texas Christian, TCU, in the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl. So I've kind of been around college football. This is just my first time doing it. It's on a full-time beat capacity.
What's the change in being a beat writer? We've met with some reporters up there a few weeks ago before everything kicked off, and there's only a handful of them.
Yeah.
What's the challenge?
Before, I guess you call it hit and run. You kind of drop in, do a story, and leave. Just kind of immersing yourself in the beat and just kind of staying on top of it, monitoring social media, the news, news articles, and just kind of being full time all the time, covering a school. So that's been different.
Right now, you're gonna right now here in August, it's heavy football.
Yes.
Because I know you spent 3 days in Chicago for media days, and Penn State just had their media days recently and a couple practices. What other things you're looking forward to covering up there at Penn State?
I hear the wrestling's not bad.
It's not bad.
No, that's actually one of the things. One of the guys I met through covering high school sports in Mississippi, he said, "You're going to Penn State?" He said, "Man, their wrestling program there is top notch." So, I'm definitely excited to kind of learn about Penn State wrestling and cover that. Women's volleyball is huge. Soccer program, lacrosse, just made its national championship appearance. Played Yale. So there's just a bunch of sports. Basketball's supposed to be primed this year for a big year with Stevens coming back, and so just kind of excited to delve in and maybe some hockey every now and then. So.
Right. So one of the stories you reported about this week, again, another shameless plug here for us, is breaking news last week. I think a radio guy out of the Harrisburg area broke that there's talk of a high school game this year going into Beaver Stadium, and potentially in the future, PIAA championship games going in there. What do you know about that? I mean, it sounds like it's in the preliminary stages, or maybe it's a little bit farther along than we know publicly.
with schools like Penn State, that magnitude, you really don't know much. I do know Franklin was asked about it during media day. And he said, of course, our school and we're number one, but it's if we have the chance to help out with something else, we'd love to do so. He seems on board. The administration seems on board to at least hosting one game. I know State College area high school's field's being renovated right now, so that would probably make the most sense to have State College over there with another school. But it's interesting. I was talking to one of the coaches yesterday. I believe he was the coach over at Sharon High School. And he was saying, he's coached for 16 years, and he said he's always wondered why Penn State hasn't at least hosted a game or, the postseason in different states, they follow that format. So it'd be really neat to see. On the flip side, like Coach Collins over at Meadville was telling me, it's going to be kind of weird for those kids running out into a 107,000 capacity stadium and have 2,000 fans sitting in there.
Yeah, but I think it was Coach Collins that said for a lot of these guys, now Meadville's got a kid playing on Penn State, but for a lot of these guys, that's a once-in-a-lifetime chance.
It is. So if you're a high school football player, you've got to be ecstatic that this is even being floated around.
And it's a little bit of a recruiting bump for them, maybe.
Definitely. Well, let's show you our facilities while you're here, and look at our weight room. But yeah. So I'm definitely going to monitor that and see when or if they're going to do it this season. But the school seems on board, and like you said, they mentioned even possibly having a state championship there one day.
Okay. This question is not on our list, but I'm going to ask Elton because I know he and I have made this visit before. You're living in State College now. You've been here about a month. How many times have you been to the Creamery?
Well, you know what? I don't know if the people at the camera can see it, but I'm trying to manage my weight. But in my freezer right now, I have 3 of the big tubs of ice cream. And
what's your go-to?
Peachy Paterno. I love it.
Did you try the August pie yet?
I haven't tried the August pie. I've got Scholar's Chip, and I've got the Roast Diggs something berry. But you can't go wrong. Ask me in a few weeks, and if I break protocol to my diet,
once the kids get on campus, it's going to be a little bit tougher to get there.
Well, maybe I need to go before and then start my diet later.
Give us a little bit of a plug here on how people can get in contact with you.
Email is ehayes, that's HAYES, at cnhi.com, and on Twitter, I'm at EHDC12.
Okay. Elton Hayes, Penn State's new beat reporter for CNHI. See you next time.
Thanks for watching One on One. Be sure to tune in next week for another installment.